Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar, Performance Manager 2.x Advanced, presented by Juan Soothill. My name is Laura Lawrence and I'm the Global Marketing Director at Harman. So just a few things before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted to keep down noise levels during the webinar. However, there is a Q&A function where you can submit questions to the presenter and he'll try to answer as many as possible at the end. This webinar is being recorded and the link will be made available a few days after this presentation. We do have a number of other webinars taking place over the next few months for audio, lighting, video, and control, and we'd like to encourage you to take a look at the different webinars in our Learning Session Workshop series on pro.harman.com. And we're also adding new sessions daily. We have over 20 sessions scheduled for July and August, so watch for those on the calendar. And now I'd like to introduce you to Juan Soothill, the presenter for today's webinar. Juan began his career as an audio engineer in 2000, mixing front of house and designing JBL sound systems for music festivals and tours. This evolved into conducting JBL Vertec and VTX training sessions for Harman over the last 14 years. And now I'll pass it over to you, Juan.
Thank you, Laura, and welcome everybody. I am glad that you guys have joined us for this session. So yeah, let's kick it off. We're going to look at Advanced Performance Manager, like Laura said, and just a little bit about me. I am a systems engineer and designer. I have about 20 years of experience with Harman touring systems. I'm also a Harman Tour Audio ambassador, and also I am authorized by Harman as a VTX trainer. So yes, just looking at the VTX software ecosystem, which we've looked at over the last couple of sessions. We've looked at line array calculator 3 and also how to get that capture that on ArrayLink. Today we'll look at Advanced Performance Manager, like I said. Just to quickly recap what we've done in the previous sessions, we've looked at basic Performance Manager software introduction. We added some templates. We imported a LAC project into Performance Manager. We added some amplifiers and associated channels to those amplifiers. We set the HiQ net addresses, and we took that system basically online and tested it. So today we are going to look at the advanced features of Performance Manager, and that looks basically at all of the application options. We're going to look at the Tools tab and everything containing and pertaining to the Tools tab. Same with general workflow. And we are finally going to look at advanced run show mode, which is basically when we are running the show, we will be looking at how we can meter the amplifiers, check impedances live, check the voltages of the amplifiers, and so forth. So heading straight into Performance Manager, I'm going to go directly into the application options, which you can find under File. And if you go Application Options, you've got a couple different options to look at. You've got General Settings, Network Connectivity, Event Log Messaging, and Default Options. So starting right on top, we'll look at the General Settings. First off, you can change the background basically of Performance Manager to a dark view, like you can see at the moment. If you change that over to a daylight view and hit OK, that will basically be very helpful when you do outdoor setups and you need to kind of navigate on your computer and see everything on Performance Manager. So that's very, very useful. So for the moment, I'm going to switch back to dark. And the next option, the tick box, it says show container name. If I deselect that and hit OK, normally you'll see that each container, like the VRACs, will have its name, underneath it right there. So at the moment it's gone. Once I tick the box again, show container name, and hit OK, those will appear, as you can see, underneath the VRACs. And the same goes with all of the other containers that you've got. Automatic zoom, this is a very useful function. It is ticked at the moment. If I deselect it, and if I need to zoom into a specific or onto a specific container or amplifier rack, you'll need to make use of these functions right there, and you'll be able to move in and out and zoom in and out. So if the box is ticked, normally if I click on a empty space here and I hit spacebar, it will basically zoom out to capture the entire venue file and the venue file view, basically. So that's an option I would suggest you always tick, because it's just a very useful way to navigate around and to zoom in and out onto, throughout the venue file. Next option we have is Q or Octaves, and that is pertaining to the EQ section graph. I'm just very, I use the Q all the time because it's a useful function in terms of being able to see the Q rather than the octave bands on the frequency, group EQ section. So the next one is specify high Q net address when amplifying. If you untick this box and hit OK, if you add another amplifier rack into the venue view, basically it will automatically, and I'm just going to do that quickly just for you guys to see that. If I drag this in, automatically it will start at the lowest number, which is obviously number 1. So for the moment, I'm going to quickly delete that and then just show you what happens when I tick that box. So when I select specify high Q net address when amplifying again and add this, this little box comes up, and you can now specify the range within what you want it to be, basically. So again, another useful selection that you can make. The next box says a measurement. This is pertaining to the smart integration, basically, that you can do within Performance Manager. So you'll need to tick that, and you need to go and activate the API setting within Smart underneath the option settings, but we're not going to look and delve too much into that today. The next couple of features has got to do with the JBL Vertec powered series, basically. And once you import and load settings to the and presets to the Vertec DP series, you can choose either to send the older version 4 presets to it or utilize the version 5 presets. So you can choose which of those sets of presets you want to use. Show warnings is very useful. This box is automatically ticked as well. It basically shows you all of the warnings, which is just very helpful yet again. The next box, show incompatible HiQnet app warning. This is if you run other HiQnet applications, which might be outdated. If this is ticked, Performance Manager will actually tell you that it's incompatible. The next box, which is unticked at the moment, which you can tick if you maybe set within a specific venue and you use the same venue file all the time, you can tick this box. So once you close Performance Manager and open Performance Manager back up again, this current venue file will always basically load up. So error reporting, this is a very useful tool for Harman to basically tell you if you have got any software issues with your Performance Manager. It will tell and capture all of those issues, and this will then be sent to the team back at the factory, and they can basically analyze and see what went wrong with that. So that's general settings. If we go network settings, the application IQNet address is basically just a application address for your specific application. Each application will have a different IQNet address. The meter subscription rate is just basically how quickly or how slow your meter section within Performance Manager will respond. Now, as a start, the 50 millisecond meter subscription rate is perfect. It works very well. You can go and make that slower or faster as you wish. But like I said, a lot of these options are already kind of helpful, and it will get you on your way. The next section is matching devices IQNet address behavior. By default, this is ticked, and it says use existing device IQNet address when devices are matched. And I'm going to, for the most part, leave that ticked. The other option that you've got here is use venue IQNet address when devices are matched. Like I said, by default, I use the existing device IQNet address, because once I auto match and receive from the network, I want to have those addresses from the amplifiers. I want to maintain that basically. The next section is called matching devices rack names behavior, and because again, after I've loaded up settings to the amplifiers, when I auto match and receive back, again, I want to maintain those rack names, which I have given the amplifiers and the containers. If we jump over to network connectivity, this is a very important section, because a lot of people miss this, and especially when you have network issues and you cannot see the amplifiers underneath your NetNet Setter, this is where you need to have a look. So you can see currently selected, I've got my Ethernet port there. I'm going to remove this for now. Sometimes what will happen, if you have a new installation of Performance Manager, you'll need to go and add your network adapter to the application basically. So you need to marry your network port to Performance Manager. So as you can see, if I add a connection, you can see Ethernet, Wi-Fi, those two ports basically that I can choose from. And at the moment, I'm running my Ethernet port, so I want to add that connection, and there you go. It's all added up there. If we go to the next view, that's called event log. Now, this is also quite a useful feature within Performance Manager. This is a logger that captures every single thing that basically happens within Performance Manager. It captures every single warning, every potential problem you might encounter with amplifiers, etc. So you can have a maximum number of 2,000 events that the event logger will log. You can also view that update instantly, or it will be delayed. By default, this delayed box is ticked. Just for you guys, just to see the actual event logger, this is basically how the event logger looks. And you can see there's a whole bunch of events already there, which comes from previous shows that I've done. So the next box is miscellaneous. You can choose just to disable the logging feature, which I won't suggest, because if you've got a problem with an amplifier of some sort and you need to go back to the distributor to book in your amplifier, it will be useful just to give them proper information of what went wrong with that particular amplifier. We can also customize the warnings from a minimum priority. We can basically capture, or the event logger will by priority log these specific events for you from a high to a low, or you can choose none. The warning type is every single error, every single warning information pertaining to a specific device. Warnings in category will be application warnings, device warnings, or a protocol warning. So by default, I would say that you leave that as it is, and by default just use that. It's very useful. If we go to the next box, it says event log messaging. You can choose to send the event log via a SMTP server. Not going to delve much into this IT section of Performance Manager, but just know that it can be done. The next section is called default options. Very useful little section here. If you've got a certain way that you run your VRX or your M series monitors or your VTX V20 system, you can by default set these up here, these modes up here. So like for the VRX 900, you've got two modes. You've got bi-amped and passive. For the time being, I'm gonna just leave it like that. Same for the M20 and M22 series monitors. You can choose between passive and active, bi-amplified and passive. And then VTX V20 mode is active or two-way passive. And then your rack default for amplification, you can either let Performance Manager decide for you, or you can choose to load up 4x3500s if you only have 4x3500s in your warehouse, or 12,000s, or any of your custom racks that you've done. So basically that is the application options. I just want to quickly pause to say that Rahul and Nick is in the background. They'll be taking some questions as well. If you want to fire us some questions, Rahul and Nick will be able to answer those for you as well. So the next section is the Tools tab. So if we go into that and we click NetNet Setter, now this is the section where we set up all of our network addressing and device IDs. Very, very important section. The very first thing that I do as a start, just to get I like to see my amplifiers sequentially. So I always go and click on this device ID, and it arranges all of your amplifiers basically from the lowest number to the highest number in terms of its ID. So yes, that is the NetNet Setter. Just want to quickly show you guys. I'm going to locate an amplifier quickly. And by doing that, I'm just going to quickly swap my video around to the actual VRAC, which you will be able to see now. Once I hit locate, you'll see that the amplifier is locating, and you'll be able to easily see which amplifier within your VRAC setup is locating at the moment. So if I stop that, you can see the amplifier is returning back to its normal state. So just very, very useful. I think on the previous sessions that was done, we had a closer look at the NetNet Setter in more detail. But basically, if you've done a lot of changes within your NetNet Setter in your venue, you can go and rescan this as well, and just for the NetNet Setter to refresh itself a little bit. So that is HiQNet NetNet Setter. In short, if we go to the event log, which we've covered previously, we can see all of your event logs that's happened. It's clear at the moment. So all of your events will be captured there inside that window. If we go to the firmware update, very important section here as well. If we go, a little warning box will appear once you hit the firmware update, and it says device presets will be lost. Be sure to save device and venue files before updating firmware. Reload device files and make sure to send presets back down to the device after updating. So it basically says that once you've done a firmware update, just go and reload your settings to the amplifiers again. So if I click OK, it opens up another window for you, and you'll be able to see what your current version of your firmware is and the available or the latest version of your firmware. And obviously, as you guys can see, it's all my amplifiers are all updated. But if you need to do an update, you can just go and check that box, update, and then you can start and begin your update. If we move over to access control, this is a very useful function. If you've got a VTX system installed in a venue and you need to give a front of house engineer or a guest engineer access to certain parts of Performance Manager, or certain elements that you don't want to assign or give them permissions to, basically. So if I check this box here, at the moment we have given the front of house engineer access to basically the entire application. They can go and add, open up a new file, they can save a new file, and basically go into every single option. So you can go and uncheck the ones that you don't want to give them access to, and then they will only be able to see the section or the parts that you've given them access to and that they can see. So you've got different roles. You've got your venue or systems engineer, and which will have access to every part of a Performance Manager, and then from the front of house engineer and the guest engineer 1, guest engineer 2, you can assign certain permissions to that. So again, very useful tool. The next block is the rack builder. If you've got basically custom amplifier racks which you need to configure, this is the place where you would configure those. So just for this, for an example, I'm going to utilize 3 amplifiers. I'm going to use similar amplifiers, and I can go and choose if it's the iTech HD series, and that can be the IT 5000, IT 9000, or IT 12000 series, or 4x3500 HDs. If I click next here, you can see that because I checked the same amplifier or same model box, I won't be able to change any of that. So next up, we can actually tell that amplifier what it needs to do, what it needs to be. Does it need to be a full range, like a passive monitor amplifier, or what does it basically need to be? You can go and choose your arrangement. So I am just going to set this up as a monitor rack, just for as an example. And I can go and give this a name now. So I will label this as monitor rack. So if I hit finish, you'll see that that custom rack has now been added to my amplifier library, which I am now able to basically drag it in from there. So the next box is called Speaker Builder. So this is very useful if you've got different speakers basically, and you need to basically build a preset for this. And I'm going to just use an example of what I have in my inventory at the moment, like the SRX 712 monitors. If I want to go and set that up, I can do so. So I can go and build that speaker physically, and I can basically see or tell it, is it a passive one-way, is it a bi-amplified or tri-amplified or quad amplified or four-way speaker. And just in this example, I'm going to just choose passive one-way. I'm going to associate an amplifier to that. Click next. And now Performance Manager is going to ask you, where do I need to find my preset for this speaker? So it's going to associate a preset to that speaker. So once you load up your speaker into Performance Manager, that preset file attaches to that speaker, if that makes sense. So we've got a very useful little manual on how to build a speaker preset from scratch, from any of the iTech HD amplifiers, which we'll make available to you. At the end of this session, I will share Nick's information with you, and you can just shoot him an email to get that little guide. It's very useful. So basically at this point, because I don't have a preset file on this machine, I won't be able to go further. But once you've built your preset file, you can load it up, and it's as easy as that. Going to the device tools section, you've got a couple options here. So at the moment, this is a feature I don't use that much. I can basically choose to put this amplifier to sleep at this point, which I don't do often, or I can lock out the front display and the front panel essentially, so that you won't be able to have access from this front of the amplifier at all. So that is the device tools. If I click, go to the next little section here, if I click or select a VRAC and click open, it opens up this entire VRAC in a lot more detail. Now, I just want to caution you guys on this. It's not really necessary to go into any of this, but it's useful when you need to go and have a look at a specific problem of any sort, on a rack, I'll show you there's a different way to click onto an amplifier and just have a look and view one specific amplifier. We'll get to that a little bit later. So that is what you can do there. I can now basically go and delete this VRAC if I really wanted to, or I can select all of my containers that I see in my venue view, and I can go and delete the whole lot if I needed to do that. This find device feature is useful when you've got maybe a big venue file and you need to go and find a specific amplifier or container. You'd be able to do all of that. Great, so we are moving along pretty swiftly. So let's look at some general workflow within Performance Manager. I just wanted to make a note that you can design your entire Performance Manager file offline before you get to the venue, so that you at least most of the work, or can get 95% there, and just do final adjustments when you take your system online. So you can save yourself a heck of a lot of time by doing that. That is common practice for me. It just saves me a whole bunch of time. So jumping into the next topic, I want to show you guys the repeating array option. So the repeating array option is self-explanatory, basically, but it's very useful if you need to repeat these arrays, and you can let's say we've got a big delayering system and you need to add that to Performance Manager. I'm just going to drag that in, and now Performance Manager asks me, because they are the very same arrays, they've got the same number of boxes, etc. You can check or uncheck a couple of features, which is very useful just in terms of running and managing those arrays within Performance Manager. So you can choose array, if the boxes are ticked, array circuiting will be the same, are grouped together. The amplification and racking options are the same. Input source selection is the same. Array calibration settings, like the array size compensation, will be the same. The boxes that are by default unchecked are the gain adjustments and the delay controls, because they might be, especially if it's in a delay ring and you've got the positions of these arrays are just slightly different. You need to obviously be able to manage them independently and delay them independently. But just a very useful feature. So once I clicked OK, you can see my template is now empty. And I'm just going to put some speakers in there quickly. I'm going to choose to put 8 VTX 812s in there, drag that in there. And as you can see, my 2 array templates are exactly the same, 8 boxes. They are circuited together. The same basically, as you can see, 332, 332. So that is repeating arrays. I'm just going to delete that to clear up the view a little bit. So the next little feature I want to show you is just by adding individual amplifiers to your venue. So I'm just going to drag in a single 4x3500. I'll say yes. Well, let's say my finish address is 30. So let's just make that starting address 31. Yes. So basically it brings up an empty 4x3500 for you. And a quick and easy way to assign speakers to it is by just clicking on the speaker. I've just populated this with a M22. If I click and drag this, it will associate that amplifier channel to that speaker, and the same with that. So now it's associated. So that you can do if you need to add amplifiers separately to your venue file. It's pretty useful for that. Just going to delete that again to clear this up. So as you've noticed, I clicked in this open section and hit spacebar, and it just brought my view, my venue view, and I can now see pretty much everything within my view, all of my containers, all of my amplifier racks. So you guys have learned in the previous sessions that you can basically build your LAC file and import your LAC file complete into Performance Manager without adding your speakers separately. But if you don't have that, I just want to show you how that can be done. And there's two ways of doing it, two quick ways of doing it. I'd say both of these are pretty quick. The first way to do it is to go to your array template and choose a template that suits you. Let's say add a left-right in there. It will automatically then bring in your left-right. We can now then add some speakers to this. So let's say we've got 9 boxes of 812, which we want to add here. It now brings up the 9 boxes within both templates. Also want to show you at the same time, let's say we've got some 812 wides which we want to insert at the bottom of this array. We can quickly and easily do it by choosing the number of 812 wides that we've got, let's say 3, and we can just drag it in, and automatically Performance Manager, as you can see, will be located down at the bottom of the array. So it's very easy to build these arrays and to populate them with speakers. We can now choose, go back to our racks, choose the number of amplifier racks that you've got, and you can now associate your speakers to those amplifiers. So what we can do as well, let's say we've got B18s. Let's do another, well, let's clear up this for a second. Add a left and right array. And let's add some flown B18s to this array. If we go subwoofers, let's say 3 B18s in this array. And we can now go and add some A8s as well in the same array. Now, as you can see, you've got a flown array of B18s and VTX A8s now in the same cluster, essentially. So that's how we mix different models of VTX series within the same array. So very easy to do that. Next, I want to show you how to build a cardioid subarray manually. So again, in the previous sessions, you guys have looked at how to build your subwoofer arrays within LAC, and we're going to import a file shortly. But if you want to build these manually, it's very easy to do so. Let's quickly go and do that. Let's add 3 G28s to this venue file. So when you add three speakers or subs like we did now into the venue view, it asks you, how do you want to stack these? Do you want to stack them horizontally like this, or do you want to stack them on end? So for the moment, I'm going to choose just on end. I can go and just label this as subs. And if we go up here to the device view section, there's a little section there that says orientation. If we click that, we can see the subwoofer orientation basically. So for the time being, my cardioid block is built like this. So the center subwoofer is reversed. So very easy to build a manual cardioid block of subs. So I can just go back there. Let's delete that to clear this up again. Hit spacebar. Fantastic. So next up, let me show you how to add a subwoofer file which you've calculated in performance in LAC. If you go down to subwoofer ground stacks, you'll see there's an import subwoofer array. Let's add that. And now it wants to go and pick up that file which you've created. So as you can see, there it is. Let's open that up. And now we can see this, the subwoofer array that we've created within LAC altogether. So what it will do is it will, let's say you've built an EDS block within LAC. It will automatically import all of the delay times into this file as well. So once you take this file online, all of the necessary settings will already be there. So very easy to do that. I'm just going to delete this again. So I've built a little file here with some VTX A8s and some G28s and 2 of the VRACs that we've got here. And I am just gonna take this online for the time being because I want to just explain VDrive to you guys quickly. If we go to the select input sources, let me just take this other window away from here. If I click on the VTX A8 array, I've got a couple of options to choose from. So it says AES mode is on VDrive, or I can choose it to be on the XLR. Now, if you choose the XLR, your signal, the VRAC will pick up your AES signal from the XLR, which is on the physical panel of the VRAC. And I can go and choose where did I patch that signal into. Did I patch it into AES 1 and 2 or 3 or 4? So at the moment it's on AES 1 and 2. So I can, if it's a left-right setup, then I would want to choose my left cluster to be AES input 1 and my right cluster to be AES input 2. So because I only have one One cluster here, I am going to choose AES input 1 for that. And that is basically also on VDrive. So my setup at the moment at the back here is I've got a console with AES out patched into the VRAC at the back on VDrive, because VDrive is for the most part what I use to distribute audio between all of my VRACs. But you can go and choose to do that on the XLR. So at the back of the VRAC, you've got AES inputs and outputs, and you can choose whether you want to use those physical XLR inputs and outputs or utilize VDrive through the network cable. So because we have to network all of our VRACs together to get our network, I utilize the VDrive for the most part, like I said, because it's just a flexible, easy, reliable way to distribute audio to all of my amplifiers. So we'll take a look at the VDrive in tomorrow's session. I'll show you guys how I run a specific show, and I will just explain a little bit more about the VDrive in tomorrow's session. So if we go and look at the Tune System section of Performance Manager, I want to show you guys a couple of different tools here. So once we've gotten online with our system, well, let's start here. I think this is a better way to actually do it. So once we've gone online, so we are online, as you can see with my system, I can go and edit the groups, meaning my speaker arrays. And I have already actually done that, as you can see. So I've called my cluster, the speaker cluster, I've called A8 because that is my A8 cluster. I can go and rename that quite easily. So if you've got a bigger setup, you can go and name those arrays and those clusters with a specific name. Very useful. And the same I did with my subs as well. And as you can see, monitor mix 1 and monitor mix 2 are those two monitors right there. So we've had a look at this session in this section in terms of the input sources. We've had a look at we've chosen AES from our VDrive for our tops, and then for our subs we have chosen, I'm just going to go AES input 2. So that we have now selected our input sources. If we want to go and test our system, we can, I'll show you the best way to do it once you start out. So this will be muted. So your venue file will be muted. You can now activate the onboard signal generator, and we can unmute sections of the speakers now to test them. And just a note on this, the signal, the impedance measurement will only activate once the amplifier reads a +5 volts back from the actual driver over the coil, and that can happen depending on how long your speaker cable runs are. So I've got a standard 25 meter cable at the moment plugged in. So you'll see that number, as soon as I hit -20, that will kind of kick in now. And if I go the mid-highs, you'll see that number will now settle. And you might I'm not sure if you guys can hear that, but my A8s are running at the back of my office at the moment. And what you'll do is, once those numbers have settled, you can switch those off, but you'll go about this very methodically and work through your system, and you'll be able to, obviously, at this point in time, pick up any problems and rectify it if it's a cable problem or whatever. You'll be able to pick up at that point in time. So the next section here is tune system. Now this is where we can basically calibrate our system and do our phase alignment and our time alignment for the system. So I am going to quickly go into this section. So as you can see, delay is self-explanatory. These are the delay settings of each speaker cluster, basically. So we can go and change that very easily to align our subs and our top boxes. We can also choose to see that in feet or in meters. I always prefer to measure that or to see that in milliseconds. So next up, we can have a look at our level settings, and we can see circuit levels and array levels. So those are obviously quite different. So let's say I want to take that down by 3. I can separately take the circuit setting down by another 3 dB as well, which it doesn't affect that at all. So the next little button is called Calibrate Arrays. So what you see in front of you is actually the line array control panel, which you see in line array calculator as well. So once you've built your file and you've loaded your file up and you've made changes to your control panel, you'll actually visually see those changes that you've made right here. Now, at the moment, I haven't done anything to my little cluster, so you can go and tweak and make changes to anything at this point in time. So let's say I want to add a little bit of HF to my system, and I want to make it a high shelf. I can do so, and that will be done over the entire array. So you've got array filters, and then you've got circuit filters, which is pertaining to each and every circuit of your system. This will be applied to the entire array, as you can remember in the previous sessions. So that's calibrate arrays. Just if I click here, you'll see that calibrate array is now, let me just quickly go there. It's grayed out. So you physically have to go into the actual circuit of the arrays, and then you'll be able to access that. So group EQ is basically your EQ section of your performance manager, and you can now go and make overall EQ changes to circuits and to the entire venue, to be honest. It depends on what you need to do, but you've got EQ processing blocks on every single circuit and array, basically. So meaning your A8s, you've got a separate processing EQ, group EQ for your A8s and your subs and your monitors and so forth. If we look at mute matrix, very very quickly. So this is just the matrix view in terms of mute and unmute. So we can quickly mute and unmute our entire venue, or choose to unmute only certain elements of your venue. Very easy. Just one thing I want to make you guys aware of is, by default, mute protect will be on, and it's just protecting you from accidentally muting anything during the show. So if you need to unmute or mute certain elements, let's say when you do your time alignment or anything like that, you just need to go and deactivate that so that you can unmute and unmute the sections that you want to, basically. So for the time being, I'm going to activate that again. So just heading onto this little section, we've touched on this briefly, and it's the device view of Performance Manager. So we can go and choose to see a couple different things. We've done orientation. As you can see, that subwoofer is reversed at the moment. But if we hit device panel, we can see our amplifiers. And if we double click on the amplifier, we'd be able to go into the actual amplifier, that specific amplifier. But again, like I said before, I want to caution you guys not to fiddle around too much. I only use it to troubleshoot a specific problem. If I have a specific amplifier problem, that's when I utilize this view to be able to have a look at a specific amplifier, have a look and see what the issues are. But for the most part, again, I stay out of that. And if I click bandpass, I am right back at seeing my entire venue file. So let's go and run our show. So by default, if you run your show, mute protection is on. I might want to make my venue live. That's always a good thing. Then put mute protection on again. So by default, you see that you will see system meters selected. So I am going to quickly put some music through there. So as you can see, so at the moment I can see the entire system meters section, meaning I can, like for instance, the subwoofer, we've got two discrete drivers within the G28, speaker 1 and speaker 2, and I can see the joint information of the entire array in this view. Same with the VTX A8 section. This is a general an overview of the entire array, basically, in terms of metering. If I switch to, let me just bump this music up again. If I go to circuit meters, I can physically see the metering in per circuit mode, which is again something I really toggle between during a show, because I always try and make sure that my circuits are getting output from the amplifier. So like you can see there, I've got my G28.1, G28.2, and then G28.3, and I can independently see the circuit meters. So again, I utilize this, I toggle between all of it throughout the show. If I go to load, I want to show you guys this. So at the moment, I do not have a speaker cable plugged into this bottom circuit of the A8, and you'll see that the the value will actually ramp up now because it's the amplifier is detecting a open circuit, so to speak. At the moment, somebody just went and plugged it in, but what will happen is once a problem like that occurs, if I hit system health, it will actually give us a warning on which circuit gave us an issue. So that at the moment you can see it is green, but if we've got an issue or any warning within Performance Manager, that will turn red, and you can go and have a look and to see what what the issue is, where do I have an issue, and you can go and rectify all of that. So heading back there, so just getting back to the sensing side of this impedance section, if you can recall what I said before, depending on your speaker cable length, that will determine at what volume you need to have your music or your noise when this value is actually activated. So at the moment you can see it's stable. If I take it up, you'll see it will kick in and those values will actually change up. So if we go to the next block here in terms of circuit thermal, this is just sensing how hot the amplifiers are. At the moment, it's not really hot at all, so don't have any thermal issues at all. If I go circuit AC, this is the actual voltage that the amplifier connected to that circuit is now seeing. So you can see I'm fluctuating between 209 and 222 volts at this point. Again, this is a section I utilize a lot, just to make sure throughout my show that I don't have any big issues with amplifiers or potential issues with power. If I click input priority, like I mentioned before, I've got a AES signal connected to my speakers, and hence my priority will be sensed as a high priority. That's my highest priority signal. If I go to AES status, you can see that all of these blocks are green, meaning that AES is locked in. So meaning I will have signal coming to those speakers. I just quickly want to exit this and go back to my select input sources. So if we go into this little window, we can set up a couple different things. And if you run AES, it's just a force of habit for me. I never run AES alone. I always have a backup, an analog backup to my system. So you can go and set up all of those priorities right there. If you don't connect a specific analog audio signal to it, just go up and press none. Just make sure it's none is selected in that. Otherwise, it might give you some issues. So I just want to quickly activate my signal again, so that I can show you the next section. So at the moment, I can monitor output metering, but I can also monitor input metering, which is very low at this point. There you can see my input metering, which I can see what the difference is also between my input and output metering. Again, very useful to be able to see that. What I also can see, let me just bring my music back down. What I can see is my peak metering output or my continuous RMS outputs. At the moment, my music is just very soft, so excuse that. But anyway, like I said, you can view peak metering settings and continuous meter settings. By default, peak is selected. The next little block here is delay, and we can now again see the overview of our delay settings, level settings. We can see again our mute matrix, and we can also choose to exit the show at this point in time. I quickly want to end off by showing you just this little section here. This is the event logger, which I showed you before. And now there's a couple of things that happened now during our session now. And this is where you can see that. You can also go and store this. And like I said, from a troubleshooting point of view, if you've got an amplifier giving you hassles, you can save this up and you can actually give this to the workshop guys for them to have a look at as well. Then here we can see which person has got access to the venue, and it's a system engineer. We can see we've got 6 detected devices. We've got 6 amplifiers at the moment as well, and 6 of them are matched and 6 are synchronized as well. So meaning all of them are on and functioning at this point in time. We do have a help file, which is that little button there, which if you need to go and brush up on anything, you can go and find anything in the help file. So this is basically a quick brief overview of Advanced Performance Manager. Do we have any questions at this time?
Yeah, we do. A few of them were answered during the Q&A or during the presentation. But Nick, if it's okay with you, I'm going to read them out loud, and that way everybody can participate in the responses for them. So the first one was, with default options, is there going to be the ability to set the default amplification mode for G28s in the future? So
I definitely think that's a Nick question.
Nick, I think you might be.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so what I responded with, that I'm aware of, there are no current plans to actually implement this in the current version of Performance Manager as we know it. As one would suspect, we will bring on newer, better, greater versions of Performance Manager, and perhaps at that point, we could actually implement that. So.
Okay, and then the next question was asking, what is the point to designate amplifier channel type in the rack builder? I thought when you grab a speaker such as an A12 or A8 or B18, the amplifier will load the correct preset.
That is correct. So if you've got, if you have, let's say, a different monitor altogether, it's just useful at that point in time to customize a specific setup. So it's only for that purpose. And if you've got a custom rack layout, it's what you need to basically build from scratch. That's when it becomes very, very useful, because you need to do that. Not sure if that answers your question.
I could help answer a little further on that one, and Laura. We need to remember that this is part of a historical feature. Before, in previous generations of Performance Manager, specific amplifier channels were pre-assigned to specific band passes. With the later versions of Performance Manager, now we are able to basically drag any band pass to any amplifier channel. Nevertheless, many companies that have custom racks instead of V-racks, they have them wired in a specific manner, where they might have 4 amplifiers to run their tops and a 5th amp, for example, to run subs, and that's the way their panel is wired. So perhaps they want the custom amp rack to remind the operator of how things are actually wired in the rack. You can still drag any bandpass to any amplifier channel, but now it's become more of a visual cue for the operator as to how the actual amp rack is wired. So that's why we still have that ability in there. Okay.
All right, it looks like that was the last question that came in. I just wanted to give a reminder that Juan does have a second session tomorrow at the same time. So if you're not registered for that and you're interested in attending, you can still register out on pro.harman.com. It should be the first webinar that's appearing on the calendar. And then it looks like Juan also has, or Nick has his contact information up on the screen. So if there are additional questions, you can feel free to email him directly with your questions. Juan, thank you so much for the presentation. We really appreciate your time and look forward to hearing from you tomorrow.
Thank you, Laura. See you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.